enforce the sanctions against Covenanters, people who still believed the Covenant force and supported them, was that they sent troops to garrison various areas of the Covenanter strength. And that was Lanark and Dumfries and Ayr, also Angus and Fife. Those were all strongholds of Covenanter communities who continued defying the king's edicts. So they sent troops to those areas, garrison troops, and oftentimes not just any troops. It was usually Scots. They usually sent Scottish soldiers to punish Scots. But one of the more diabolical aspects of the plan was that they rounded up or offered all kinds of rewards to Roman Catholic Highlanders, and they put them in the homes of the Covenanters. They brought the Highlanders down, who were culturally absolutely barbaric when it came to their lives and their actions and their hatred of the Covenanters and their desire for loot. And of course, they're being, just like redcoats being put in the homes of colonial Massachusetts citizens a couple centuries later, they put these guys in people's regular homes, and they had to sustain them. They had to somehow protect their women, and that was the point. You don't go to the conventicles. Down in the south near Dumfries, a small town down there were some of these soldiers were hanging around in the town, and they had gotten their hands on an elderly man in his 80s, who had attended a conventicle. And they heard about it, and they were pushing him around just in the street, and they were knocking him down and screaming at him. A bunch of young guys, Covenanters, 20-something, decided to intervene. And the soldiers went for their weapons. The Covenanter boys beat them full sword, and one of them died. One of the soldiers died as a result of this beating. So then a lot of the local men decided that they'd had enough of this. They wanted to petition the Scottish Parliament to ease off on the restrictions of the conventicles. And so they assembled in a body and began moving toward Edinburgh to present their petition to Parliament. And as they walked to Edinburgh from the south of Scotland, more Covenanters heard of what they were doing and joined them. And it wasn't long before they had a couple thousand Covenanter men, which included a number of preachers, who joined this band. And when the government heard about it, they saw it. They saw it as they were coming to overthrow the government. And this was like, January in America. They were heading to the Capitol to overthrow the government with revolution. And like their later counterparts, they got to bring their weapons with them. But the soldiers were rounded up into their army. They brought in all of their patrols and all of their soldiers, and they confronted this group of Covenanters just outside of Edinburgh in the Pentland Hills. And at a place called Rulian Green, the army attacked, and the Covenanters tried to defend themselves, and a big battle ensued. The Covenanters lost in about 5 minutes and ran for it, and of course the troops then ran them down and slaughtered as many as they could and captured as many as they could get to surrender with promises of being treated fairly. And they were hustled right to the assizes. In Edinburgh, they were quickly condemned as treasonous and revolutionaries and executed. A whole bunch of them were executed. And these four men were from Lanark, and they cut off all their heads, and they sent them around. They brought these guys. They brought to Hamilton, put their heads on their right hand, because their right hand that right hand, they had signed the covenant. And they refused to sign the abjuration of the covenant and the agreement to recognize the King of England as, so they cut off their right hands. And they sent their right hands on display in Lanark. And so all of this was just a big message to the Covenanters that this is what happens to people that resist when the government tells you how you are to worship. This is what can happen to you if you're a rebel. And it's kind of a unique monument. I haven't seen anything else like it in Scotland. 4 likenesses of those 4 men who were buried here in Hamilton. And I noticed that 2 of them are Hamiltons, as a matter of fact. These are probably cousins of the Lord, whose town this is. And then the second memorial is to 3 other men who were involved in the Battle of Bothwell Bridge, which was right over here, a mile away. Had the battle on the bridge, and a lot of Covenanters were captured. Some were, sent up to Edinburgh to die in the prison camps, but others were executed on the spot. They chased them down wherever they went, and the government always had spies living among the Covenanters and among the population. And they relied on clandestine information from spies who would tell them who the Covenanters were and who was attending, who was not attending church. They took attendance. If you weren't there, you were fined. And they wanted to know why you weren't there. And if they discovered you were at a conventicle, then your name went on another list and you got punished in some way. And there were always those who were on the government payroll secretly to turn in their neighbors or to inform on those who attended conventicles. And some of them ended up in the cemetery. Some of them ended up in the graveyard for their faith and their faithfulness. But from the government's perspective, for their rebellion and their treason against the king. So this is just another one of those places in Scotland where there are Covenanter graves. What I like about it is that their descendants remembered them and put up memorials to them. That's a brand new memorial. I mean, comparatively, that's a new memorial there. So they have not been totally forgotten down through the centuries by the Scots themselves. Most people have forgotten or consider them traitors. Or think of them the same way they think of John Knox as an evil man. But there are those who have remembered down through the generations, and that's one of our responsibilities, frankly, is to remember these fathers and mothers of the past who remain faithful unto death, in this case. But those who just remain faithful to the Word of God, the testimony of Christ, regardless of what the government says about it, or anybody else. We're called to be faithful, to be obedient. And these are people that set an example of that. And if we don't tell the next generation, it only takes one generation for this all to be lost, as we're finding in our own country. When they cease teaching American history altogether, and the part that they do teach is erroneous. So a lot's falling through the cracks. A lot of things are not being remembered or brought to the next generation. But we do find this all over Scotland. There are Covenanter memorials in the most remote places you can imagine, on hilltops, in sheep pens, on walls, on churches. They were not forgotten down through the centuries, and they're still here.
I saw with referencing the book we're reading, is it Sunshine? I forgot what the title is. The Divine Right of Kings is really, and then it mentioned Erasmus.
Right.
So can you, or have you already done that?
What?
Tie those together.
Oh, well, we've talked about the Divine Right of Kings, which is what the autocratic Stuarts believed, and all the kings of France, and that was that their word is law, and that they are not subject to anybody else's law. they mouthed the standard pieties. They were representatives of God on earth, but that their own word, because they were representatives of God, what they said had the authority of God. And that's what the Reformers were all about, leaving behind. Just accepting the word of God as the word of God, not men.
There's a groundswell going in America today in the prayer meeting, no king but Jesus.
Yes.
All right?
Yep.
Very good. Wonderful ground and a wonderful place. We're going to make our way back out around and back down to the coach and head home. All right? All right. The Guns, it's very good to see you.
Yeah.
We're going to see them on Saturday night also. Now we want to see you in. You got to give him a big hug.
Hi guys, welcome back to Graveyard Sisters. I am in Hamilton, Old Parish Churchyard, and I've came in for a little bit of an explore, and I've bumped into a bunch of American tourists who are here and they're getting a talk on the Covenanters. So here is the grave that they were talking about. So this is at Hamilton. Lie the heads of John Parker, Gavin Hamilton, James Hamilton and Christopher Strang, who suffered at Edinburgh, December the 7th, 1666. And here was interred the four heads. So this is the Four Heads Monument. Particularly heavy government repression in the southwest of Scotland left many small communities destitute and sparked off a Covenanting rebellion which was defeated at Ruling Green in the Lothians. Though promises were made to the contrary, a number of Covenanters were executed at Edinburgh and their dismembered body parts exhibited as a warning. The heads of these four Lanarkshire men were sent to Hamilton for display and their right hands were sent to Lanark. It is amazing, this is amazing, and it was amazing to listen to the talk and get some history as well. So this is the grave of the Covenanters in Hamilton. Thanks for watching.